So it's been great. I mean, after 9 albums, it's great to see that you're gonna come back with some new stuff. But part
Yeah.
yes. But one of the things that we always like to do is because we have an international audience, we tend to sort of want everyone to get a picture as to who you are and where you're from. So for the international audience, where were you sort of born and raised?
Oh, please, you guys have that story 1,000 times over, but I was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay, okay.
Mm.
And I mean, South Carolina. I mean, and I guess for all of us, and as I said, being that we're international, I mean, a lot of us would, when we think about American artists, we have we were so used to seeing a lot of artists from the '60s through the '90s starting their craft say in churches and stuff. Where did you home your sort of skills?
Church, same thing. I was born and raised in South Carolina, but of course, I started in church like most people do in the South. I was a gospel singer as a kid and, transitioned into secular music and so on. So,
Yeah, I mean, you said secular music. I mean, I think many people, especially myself, didn't realize that you were one of the pioneers of hip hop, especially female hip hop.
yeah, a lot of people don't know that because once I signed with Arista, I pretty much had a gag order not to talk about it. They didn't want to age me or date me, but I was part of the
Ah,
very first female rap group to transcend the worldwide connection. First female group on the Sugar Hill label, the sequence, and we were the first ones to tour. So before the Queen Latifahs, the MC Lights, a lot of the Salt and Peppers. We were established 10 years prior to that.
yeah. I mean, I mean, are we talking about the early '80s or was it the late '70s?
1979.
Wow. I mean, I don't even think we even knew about hip hop until the sort of early '80s.
No, you had Rapper's Delight, which was the first 12-inch, the biggest hip hop record at the time, and the female version, which was Funk You Up. Dr. Dre did it over. It's called Keep Your Heads Ringing, but that was the first rap record. Yes.
Wow. Now, I mean, I think the interesting transition is that you're raised as a gospel singer. Now, getting into hip hop, did it not seem sort of odd? Just the sort of rapping or talking as opposed to the singing, because it just
Well,
even.
fortunately for us, we could do them both.
Mhm.
So, we started out as kids doing hip hop, but we could always sing. And so it was an easy transition. That is why one of the biggest records around is the Fugees, Lauryn Hill.
Yes.
Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and the Fugees was a replica of what we did prior to it becoming so phenomenal.
Yeah. Did you get support among your peers at that stage, especially do?
Absolutely. Our album went gold in 3 weeks.
Wow.
3 weeks. We made Cashbox on Billboard. It was the first time in the history of music that females made Cashbox that quick.
Wow.
And we were the first female group to have a 12-inch to sell. 12 inches weren't selling. 45s were selling. We made a 12-inch, and it was the second one after the Sugar Hill Gang. First female group. They were the first male group to do a 12-inch that sold and broke a record.
Yeah, I mean, which is amazing, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are as to why the Sugar Hill Gang became the sort of the VHS of early hip hop, and the sequence became like Betamax, where we.
The game became synonymous to the game because, unlike Sequence, they had sampled a record which was already a huge record, which was Good
Ah,
Times by Chic.
yeah,
Sequence had an original rap record, which had never been heard by anyone. So by the time people figured out what was what, that record had already been a success. Good Times had already been a success. And what they did is just rolled on a record, jumped on a record that's already was a hit. So it was easier to recognize off the
ah,
bat. And so by the time the female version came, people had to get to know that record, but they were willing because they had such success with Good Times. I mean, with rappers you like.
Whose idea then was it to not do the sampling and say, let's just get another sort of classic track and just rap over
Well,
that?
we didn't want to do sample. We were the first and are the first of its kind to have an original rap record. So it's much better to own your rights to your record. And right now, today, 30 years later, 40 years later, we own the rights. We have over 300 and something interpolations of that record. Old Dirty Bastard, Trina, Dr. Dre, Erykah Badu, they all have used that record.
Yeah, but that way of thinking is much way ahead of its time. Even in the 90s, people weren't doing that. People were sampling. So that seems very brave. It's very business-wise
Because we
great.
wasn't thinking as business people. We were thinking as kids. We were thinking, I know for a fact, two of us were cheerleaders in the group. So we had an uncanny way of, controlling the crowd. So Funk You Up was a control the crowd record. So we took the same energy that we did with cheering for our football team or our basketball team, and we cheered for our fans. And at the end of the day, it was an easy transition because we were used to doing it.
Yeah. Is it the same? It's not the same Funk You Up that we had with Bruno Mars and Calvin.
But Bruno Mars was inspired by our funk.
Inspired by
His was Uptown Funk.
Uptown.
And he has parts of our song, Uptown Funk You Up. He said, Uptown Funk You Up. Our song was Funk You Right On Up. We're going to funk you right on up. So he took parts of that record to create his record. And he admittedly says that.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely.
It was inspired by the sequence.
Okay. My goodness. I mean, at this, when you're around what 15, 16, you're having a massive record like this, especially something that is for females, which was something very new. Was this your dream career? Did you think, yep, I'm in my career, this is going to be the greatest?
Absolutely. What 17-year-old does not feel grand with a hit record and touring the world with some of the hottest stars? Yes, of course. We thought we had hit the mark right on the spot.
But then, how did your family take the success? I mean, especially at that young age, were they really?
At first, they were a little leery, but after you start sending money home from tour dates, they're okay with
it. Yeah, because from the sequence, I know that you go to vertical hold, but then what because I think in the 80s we started getting people like Curtis Blow and others coming up. What happened?
Curtis Blow is one of our heroes. He's one of the first ones we'll tell you about the sequence. So Curtis did his thing, and I'm very proud that we're associated in the same breath.
Yeah, but what happened with the sequence? I mean, after the success of that first single and project, the album.
What happened with the sequence was everybody wanted to be on that level, and Sylvia went and snatched all of the rappers off of the streets of New York, meaning Furious Five, the Funky Four, the Treacherous Three. The house became crowded. So at that point, it was, let me work on this group, let me work on this group. And so, of course, everything is timed. It's timed. And what ended up happening is we ended up being the party girls and the girls for the West Street Mob and the Sequence and the party track girls, just trying to help everybody else get their records done. And as a result, time went by. By the time the whole roster for Sugar Hill was going bananas, we were all the way back around to square one trying to get another hit record because all of the hits were being absorbed by the newcomers that came in. Everybody was just so excited to be down that, it's just like when they invent a new Barbie doll, the old Barbie doll becomes the old Barbie doll.
So they didn't really just say, okay, yeah, because I guess it's more so if they saw you as a longer term project, they would have been like, okay, let's keep working on this stuff and not rushing just to start flooding the market with new acts.
We were being used to help the other people. Pretty much we were, singing and rapping and writing and doing other things. We were the voice of the West Street Mob half the time. It was just a lot going on that, you guys would never see in front or behind the camera.
Wow. I mean, would this part of your life ever get shown or talked about? Would you ever do that in a film?
It may or may not. You know, part of this is they like to keep a lot of things swept up underneath the rug because too much of the truth will come out. It'll spoil the lie.
Yeah, and especially the fact, because as I said, most of us would say, "Oh, Angie Stone, neo soul, pure soul," and I guess when I was doing to hear that you actually were one of the pioneers of hip hop, especially female hip hop, it doesn't seem to correlate, and it's this fascinating story that I wish when we're celebrating hip hop and the birth of hip hop and everything. It doesn't seem like they tell your story. I could have never.
But they don't, and we just did a big special that will be aired coming soon, talking about the icons of hip hop, the groundbreakers, the first responders, pretty much. So the story is starting to take wings of its own because there are a lot of artists, a lot of people that know the truth, and like the way you're feeling. A lot of the pioneers are feeling like Sequence did not get their just due. And if it weren't for Sequence, the female rap game would be a dead deal.
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, that's part of one of the things that we're trying to do is to cultivate our Black history and culture and really celebrate. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of the Halftime Chat community. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. But most importantly, why don't you consider being a member? That's a way of supporting the channel, but also getting a lot of videos ahead of time, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and some exclusive content that doesn't get shared. But anyway, thanks for watching and thanks for being part of Halftime Chat. Sweet.